Sky News has seen at first hand the pressure being experienced by doctors and nurses as they fight the latest wave of coronavirus infections. Our cameras were granted access to a children's ward with no children in it. Instead, every single bed is taken by patients with COVID, all of them on ventilators. Our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, reports from St Mary's Hospital in West London.
The silence is deafening. No patient voices can be heard. Only the constant bleeping of life support machines. This is the Children's Intensive Care Unit at St Mary's Hospital in central London. But there is no more space here for critically sick children. This is now a COVID-19 ICU, full of adults.
First, important to realise that we're a children's intensive care unit, and as you can see, we're full of adult patients, so which demonstrates the amount of pressure the system is under. People have said, this isn't a problem for children, but the indirect impacts of this pandemic are affecting children really badly. The normal healthcare system that we have for children in London is severely affected. So I wouldn't say children are not being treated properly, but clearly some of their care is compromised because of the changes we've had to make to accommodate the adults.
Just like hospitals across the country, the sheer volume of admissions means that St Mary's has been forced to increase its capacity. And that means new space constantly needs to be found to treat a rising number of COVID patients.
There are 13 patients on this ward. 12 are on intubators and they're in a coma. The doctors are using ventilators to keep them alive.
Patients deep in induced comas know nothing about the tender, devoted care they receive. The machines help their virus-infected lungs to breathe. This patient needs to be x-rayed. Maneuvering an unconscious, heavy adult is challenging.
All right, if I can get him to come to you, we'll do slightly.
The physiotherapists normally treat children who weigh around 10 kilograms. Now, they're having to prone adults who can weigh 10 times as much. The paediatric staff have had to adapt. Family liaison nurses, Joe and Helen, have the impossible task of acting as the only link between these patients and their desperately worried families. COVID-19 is doubly cruel, taking away lives and any chance of a final goodbye.
Nothing can really prepare you for seeing your loved one in intensive care with all the tubes and lines, and it can be quite scary. So before we do it, we have to prepare them, and quite often they're breaking down on the phone, and normally you would hug them and tell them, we're here for you. You can't really do that when they're, at the other end of a camera, so it's hard. And the end of life situation is the hardest, where we might allow one family member to come in. So the family has to decide, don't they, Joe, which family member's going to come in. They have to wear full PPE, and we might have a FaceTime camera so that other family members can be there virtually. But a year ago, would we ever think that was normal, to say goodbye to your mum on an iPhone, on an iPad? Whereas now this is sadly happening quite a lot, isn't it?
We were all hoping desperately that we wouldn't have to go through this again. But I think we got through it the first time. So we know that, we're hopeful that we'll get through it again intact.
This deadly crisis that has gripped London shows no sign of easing. It is real. The patients here would say the same, except they're too sick to tell you. Ashish Joshi, Sky News, St Mary's Hospital.